To insure or self-insure? That is the question. Richard Backora here, head of RIA Client Services for CBS Brokerage. Often when the topic of long-term care comes up, I get the question both from the advisor and the client. Look, we have the means. The client has the money. We can write the check if something happens to either one of us. Why not just leave well enough alone? Well, my question is, are we leveraging the resources of the industry, all the tools that may be available to us to help our clients to be better self-insurers? I'm going to share with you a long-term care case study I recently worked on. So let's introduce you to the Smiths. This is Mr. and Mrs. Smith, age 65 and 63, retired, 2 grown children, both married, 4 grandchildren, assets under management of about $2.8 million and an approximate net worth between $1 and $5 million. Their goals, not unlike most retirees, let's enjoy this retirement lifestyle. They love to travel. And most importantly, they love their family. They care a lot about their grandchildren. They'd like to leave a legacy. So as we pivot the conversation to long-term care, there are 2 components to that discussion. What is the plan and how will we fund it? Now, what do we mean by what is the plan? Do we have our durable power of attorneys in place, or a healthcare proxy and a surrogate? And do we have our will? And in this case, the docs were in place for the Smiths, but they named their son as their power of attorney and their healthcare proxy, who happens to live 800 miles away. Okay. So how will we fund it? Well, of course, self-insure. Everybody at the table knows that's why we're here. That's what we're discussing. My first question, what asset would you liquidate first? It's interesting when I ask that question. Sometimes I'll get the same answer from both the advisor and the client. In this case, I've got 2 different answers. One from the advisor and one from the client, who had identified a bucket of assets that they felt was their safety net. That was their Linus blanket, so to speak. This is the bucket we would go to if something happened to either one of us. Any unused portion of those funds we'll leave to our grandkids. Okay. So we talked a little bit about some of the potential issues. Look, we have no idea when the event is going to take place. So we have market timing. Could we be selling if we need to in a position that's in a down market toward taking a loss now to pay for healthcare and retirement? Or are we triggering, or will it trigger a potential tax liability on the growth of those assets? And then, of course, any assets that are spent on care could alter or change what their legacy plans are. Every money decision is based on 2 factors, emotion and logic. Emotion is what drives us to make a decision. And the idea here is to help, as an advisor, to provide the guidance, to connect the client with the reality of when a long-term care event happens. So we spend a little bit of time talking with the client about the duties and roles and responsibilities, if you will, that their son would be in charge of should something happen. There's a short list, but we wanted to kind of run through it with the client just so that they understood, okay, first things first. Most long-term care events, they take place in an emergency room. And at that point in time, that person who is responsible for helping or making decisions needs to contact medical professionals. We have to determine a plan of care and contact in-home healthcare providers or local facilities. If in-home care is not an option, then we need to coordinate the plan of care with the providers and the facilities. They, in fact, in certain circumstances, be responsible for providing basic care for activities of daily living. Now, mind you, their son lives 800 miles away, so that's a bit of a challenge. Certainly, as a power of attorney, executing financial decisions. Now, whether that's out of pocket, supporting mom and or dad financially, which obviously could wreak havoc on their own financial plans, or working with their asset managers, the advisor, to determine the funding mechanism for the care. They may be responsible for making timely payments to providers and facilities. And to whatever degree that they can, to ensure some standard of lifestyle for the healthy surviving parent or spouse, and to whatever degree they can, to hold on to or help to maintain any legacy goals that their parents or the spouse may need. So logic is the mathematical proof or other confirmation that an emotional decision should be executed. And in this case, it's all about the math. The client had earmarked about $300,000 in this bucket. Any unused portion of those funds would go to the grandkids, added to the legacy goal. So if we just took a very simple, this is time value of money. We take a very simple old money calculation. So we take $100,000 and say, okay, we discussed with the client at what age, and the age can vary. They chose 80. They had some family experience in early 80s, late 70s. So that was the number that we came up. Could be different for every case. If you've got health and longevity, could be longer. If not, could be shorter. But that's where the dialogue comes in with the client. So we take $100,000 and I ran it at a 4, 5, and a 6% rate of return. These are net of taxes over a 17-year period of time, 63 to age 80. And this is what we came up with. At 4%, it's about $197,000. 5% is about $229,000. And at 6% is about $269,000. Now, of course, these are not guaranteed, and investment experience of the client, risk tolerance, all of those factors need to be taken into place. So I ask you as the advisor, what number are you most comfortable with net rate of return for a couple in their mid-60s? Okay. Most of the time it's conservative. Let's just go with 4%. But I say let's look at 4, 5, and 6 just to see how that would compare from a math standpoint. So here's a proposed solution for you. What if we reallocated a portion of those earmarked dollars, the same 100,000 that we looked at in that math example, into a hybrid long-term care solution? Does two things. One, most people in most long-term care discussions, we're not connecting enough with our client about what a long-term care policy has in addition to perhaps leveraging dollars. Long-term care policies, for the most part, have a policy caregiver support mechanism to where there's a professional at that time of need that they can call, that can handle some of those tasks, that will coordinate a plan of care, that will contact the facilities. They make things run smoothly at that time of need. And in this particular case with the Smiths, that was what she really wanted. She could write the check. Money was not an option. She did not want to burden her son. Now that she understood a little bit more about what her son would have to be responsible for if something happened. And the logic, of course, in this case, the illustration we ran was $100,000. It leveraged about $356,000 in long-term care benefits at age 80. The differentiation here is making sure that we're connecting with the client enough between what will happen and what they want to have happen. We know what will happen. It's inevitable. It's going to take place. What will happen at that point in time from an emotional standpoint and a logic standpoint. And then help them to understand that the what you want to have happen, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, is the only part of the conversation and this planning situation that you can control. I don't want to burden my son was her main concern. Her husband was more interested in the leverage. When he saw the numbers, it was an interesting dichotomy, and you often get that. The bottom line is, it doesn't always work for everyone, but to not seek out all potential resources and solutions for our clients, give them the opportunity and work with them to get them to understand this is one of the most emotional, trying times of their life, and help them to understand the difference between what will happen and what they want to have happen. So how do we implement? Be proactive. Focus on emotion and logic. We know that every decision about money is a result or the conclusion of those two thought processes. Then what do? Apply both of them to what will happen with their current plan and what they would want to have happen. There's typically a delta at the bottom of that equation. And that delta is our job as advisors to provide the guidance and help our clients walk through that process before the event takes place, of course. And it's a consultative approach. It's, again, connecting the client with the reality of that situation. And long-term care is a discussion. It's a conversation. It begins at home between spouses and loved ones, with maybe adult children, anyone who is going to be responsible for either the planning of care or the coordinating of care or have financial responsibility to some degree. And then provide that guidance for them and seek out what the industry has to offer. Provide that guidance when it's most needed. Because as the advisor, when the event takes place, we're going to get the phone call. Let's be prepared to do that. Thank you for joining me today. Again, Richard Backora, head of RIA Client Services for CBS Brokerage. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you soon.